We'd like to introduce Reverend Onryu Kennedy. She received transmission in both the Katagiri and Uchiyama Roshi lineages. 2019 and 2020, she attended 3-month practice periods at Toshoji International Zen Practice Center in Japan, and in 2017 at Tassajara Zen Mountain Center in California. In the spring 2020 practice period at Toshoji, she was Shuso, head monk for the practice period. She completed zuise in January 2023, and in February 2024, her application for Kokusaifukuyoshi was approved by the Japanese Sotochu. Throughout her life, she has valued social justice work as an expression of her vow. She is currently an associate teacher at Hokyoji Zen Practice Community. She experiences great joy in the opportunity to learn and teach Buddhist practices. So welcome.
The unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, accept and maintain it. May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, everyone on Zoom. It's good to see each of you and all of you in this collective space. In the midst of your and our busy lives, it has gravity for me. So thank you. Thank you for showing up in this way. I would just like to offer homage to Buddhas and ancestors. I would like to give great thanks to all our teachers, friends, and relatives who help us to be in this space in a supportive way. I'm grateful for Hokyoji in allowing us to practice this ancient teachings and other ancient teachings in this way. And I offer homage to our Anishinaabe relatives who have supported the care of this land and who have nourished it so that we can benefit from that. There's 15 of us, 15 bodhisattvas who are aspiring on the way in our ways. Many ways, actually. There's a little different format for this Dharma talk, because we have been in retreat and I've been co-leading this with Patrice. I would like to spend about 25 minutes just talking about something that I feel is related to practicing the way. And then I would like to invite Patrice to come up and be beside me and open up the space for Q&A. And I also encourage you to offer your reflections of your experience of practice, whether it be in Zen, Vipassana, or other Buddhist traditions, or even Christian or Muslim traditions. We honor all traditions in this space. That's the beauty. We are strengthened as a community beyond our individuality. So I just bring that forward to let the Zoomers know, particularly because we had this brief discussion yesterday. So what I'd like to bring forward today is Dogen Zenji's Gakudo Yojinshu, which is points to watch in studying the way. It's a collection of his 10 independent commentaries. And he wrote them, he wrote them after he returned from Japan. And he returned from Japan in 2027, and he wrote this these essays in 1234. I do want to say that Zen and Vipassana, I feel, intersect in space and time. And often what I experience in this mind and in other conversations is sometimes there's a competition, or one is better than the other, or one is not as helpful as the other. And I feel that that's the mind. That's what the mind does. And what my aspiration is to break up this mind, to break up this karmic consciousness and open it up. Because the conditions in which we are finding ourselves in really challenge us to go beyond our preconceived and known ways of being, to really open the mind into what's inconceivable in times that I experience sometimes as inconceivable. So if I think it was Einstein said you can't use the same consciousness that built, or excuse me, how about Audre Lorde? You can't use the master's right? To dismantle the master's house. So I believe that part of my aspiration is to really dismantle the master's house with different tools. And I need to be able to break up my own karmic consciousness and invite others into this conversation. So this is the result of that aspiration. So I think that's very important to express. So I want to give thanks to Okamura Roshi as well. I feel that when I am with Okamura Roshi and he is talking about Dogen, I can experience Dogen Zenji at a much deeper level. And the more I am listening to Okamura Roshi, the deeper Dogen Zenji goes into my bones. And I understand, I want to be clear, I am not a Dogen scholar. I am just a person who has great affinity for Dogen Zenji's journey and kind of my narrative I know around him, and some of it's based in history and also Okamura's teaching of Dogen Zenji and Okamura's teachings on Dogen Zenji's life. So I have great gratitude for Okamura Roshi and the wisdom that he has offered me in relationship to Dogen Zenji. So the 10 points for study, for points to watch for studying the way are the following. And my understanding is that Dogen wrote this to help monastics, and I understand we're not monastics, I get it. And I believe that Dogen has also offered his teachings to us. So I bring these forward in that spirit, that we're included in Dogen's teachings. We're not separate. So the 10 points, I just want to go through them, just read them, and then, well, maybe let me pivot that, because I have about 15 minutes. His first point is, we must arouse bodhicitta by seeing impermanence, and study and practice without a self-centered mind and desire for fame and profit. I believe that throughout this retreat, impermanence has come up, study has come up, practice has come up, relaxing the narrative, relaxing the self-centeredness of the mind, and also to our capacity letting go of fame and profit. It feels to me that Dogen has really kind of shot the arrow throughout space and time, and letting us know that bodhicitta, bodhi awakening, citta mind, the awakening mind to the suffering, the awakening mind to the connection, the awakening mind of impermanence, that things do arise, present, and disappear. And that includes the human form, that includes the natural world. And recognizing desire for notoriety or financial gain, this letting go actually is against the culture stream in which we live. So the arising of the Bodhi mind isn't just a one-time shot. It's a continuous practice. Somebody was talking about reflecting on remembering the impermanence of life, remembering our inner connection, remembering or becoming aware of my desire for wealth, for my desire to be other than what I am. And from this remembering, this compassion, this field of awareness opens. How that is relatable to me in real time is recently I've been visiting with my elder aunt. And I bear witness to her dispersing. I bear witness to impermanence when I'm with her. It's a gift. It's a wonderful gift that she is offering me. And she doesn't even know it. It's not like I say, "Oh, thank you, Auntie, for showing me impermanence." I don't do that, but she's her gift is amazing. And what I see when I listen to her stories is I see a child that was full of joy, and in her stories developing and becoming adult and finding the person, a man who she deeply loved, and raising kids who she loved. And I'm not saying it was a Leave It to Beaver family. It wasn't. There were issues. But in her 87 years of living, this is what she's sharing with me. She's sharing with me the love of her family, the love of her husband. So this experience really arises in me compassion, arises in me impermanence, arising in me too a sense of urgency to my capacity to be present and to awaken to this moment which is constantly changing. The second point is seeing and hearing the true Dharma. We must study and practice it. Dogen Zenji writes, when a Buddha ancestor offers a single word, no one fails to transform their mind. I'm reminded of the jewel mirror samadhi. The ancient sages grieved for them and offered them the Dharma. In this teaching from our ancient sages, I have a responsibility to practice this gift and to engage the teaching to my capacity to the suffering and the cries of this world. And that suffering and those cries include me, as well as all of you in relationship to what's happening. When we enter the Buddha way, the third, when we enter the Buddha way, not only studying teachings, but through actual practice. I think to me this is really it, is that it's important to study, it's important to investigate, it's important to learn Buddhist teachings. And it's important to engage those practices with this suffering world, with our suffering world. It's not a philosophical discussion. The struggle is real. If I'm too intense, let me know. We've been sitting. This is what happened. Fourth, do not practice Buddha Dharma with gaining mind. This is the expression of emptiness. This is expressed in the Heart Sutra. With nothing to gain, the Bodhisattva relies on prajna paramita. So yes, we live in the relative world, and it costs money to eat. But I think Dogen Zenji is going beyond that and working with the gaining mind and deconstructing the gaining mind in relationship to our practice, to our life. Nothing to attain supports going through contraction with the hindrances and opening to fearlessness. So the hindrances, from my view, are not bypassed. I go through them. And from going through them, I have the possibility of opening up to fearlessness. This is the gift, this is a gift that's inconceivable to this mind. To practice Zen and study the way, we must seek a true teacher. Dogen Zenji went to China at 23 years old. He wanted to understand, if we are already Buddha, why do we need to practice? Dogen found a teacher in China, Tendo Nyojo. Dogen Zenji was fortunate to have found what he considers a true teacher. I think that for me, that I have many teachers. In fact, a shout out to one of my teachers, Ado Phoebe Reinhardt, who supported me being able to be ordained and receive transmission and be recognized as an international teacher with the Japanese Sotochu. So I can say, in relationship to my experience of seeking a true teacher, that I have many teachers, not just one. And those teachers include the otter on the rock at Grand Portage. It includes the deer. It includes grasses, trees, fences, and walls. It includes these bugs, these kamikaze flies that fly into me here. Things we should keep in mind in practicing Zen. In the Buddha way, we are inherently easy. The Buddha way is inherently easy to practice. Those ancients endowed with great ability would not have said that it is difficult to practice and difficult to understand. Well, I think these are different times. And Dogen Zenji was, he was somewhat kind of a, I'd say he is kind of like my grandmother. My grandmother, who was very attached to Catholicism. Dogen is not fanatical, but he has his view of the way things are. And I think that what I take away from there is that, again, we should keep in mind the practice and remember the practice. And the difficulty of the practice is in harmonizing our mind. Harmonizing our mind, relaxing around, when our mind harmonizes and relaxes around us being the subject, that subject begins to dissolve and disappear so that the whole world is seen as it is, which Dogen would use the word thusness or suchness. And my experience of thusness and suchness is that it does not discriminate. All is included. And I have a few more, about 5 minutes, so I just want to go through these and speak to one particular point. Those who practice Buddha Dharma, aspiring to become emancipated, awakened, must practice Zen. I think there's other practices for sure beyond just Zen that people can awaken, and that supports awakening in other traditions. I do want to say that in this, there's something I've often heard, and this will be brief, from particularly Zen practitioners. And this isn't criticism, it's just an observation. And that is that it is that the Dharma turns us and we turn the Dharma. I've always thought, what does that mean? The Dharma turns us and then we turn the Dharma, because it's kind of a cliche for me. And it wasn't until this intensive and then looking at Genjo Koan more deeply that I am somewhat beginning to awaken to what Dogen is talking about in the Genjo Koan. So the first 4 sentences in the Genjo Koan: when all dharmas are the Buddha Dharma, there is delusion and realization, practice, life and death, Buddhas and living beings. So this is our life: family, work, friends, study, meditation, living and dying, coexisting together. We take care of these things we like, and oftentimes our delusion, I experience my delusion as trying to get rid of something that I don't like within myself or within the world that I'm interacting with. And it's often one of the images that come to my mind is that I consider roses beautiful. And before I went to Ireland, I considered dandelions weeds. And we chase after realization and eliminate delusion. But in fact, let me just go forward. When the 10,000 dharmas are without fixed self, there is no delusion and no realization, no Buddhas and no living beings, no birth and no death. There is no dichotomy. So we use delusion. We don't use it. We're in delusion. And when we awaken and realize, but there is no I that awakens, it's very, it's a tangle sometimes for this mind to understand. Since the Buddha way by nature goes beyond the dichotomy of abundance, many things, and deficiencies, which is nothingness, there is a rising and perishing, delusion and realization, living beings and Buddhas. Everything is as it is at this moment. Therefore, flowers fall even though we love them. Weeds grow even though we dislike them. Conveying oneself towards all things to carry out practice enlightenment is delusion. All things coming and carrying out practice enlightenment through the self is realization. All beings coming towards this self through this body is verification. Myriad dharmas turn the self is realization. And when we turn the dharmas, this is delusion. Practice realization is in relationship to self and others and dharmas. Dharmas at this, what I mean by dharmas at this point are three: beings, truth, and teachings of Buddha. So Dharma, we don't try to turn the Dharma in our lives or our meditation. We open the hand of thought. The Dharmas are actually turning the Dharmas. This is the self, selfing itself within total dynamic functioning within the moment. There is no subject, there is no object. Within delusion and realization, both discriminating thinking and non-discriminating thinking exist. I want to end here with something that Katagiri Roshi wrote that I feel expresses this all dharmas coming. And this is in Returning to Silence. Katagiri Roshi writes, when we think about what real silence is, we have to look at it from two angles. The first is to see silence through human eyes, and the second is to see silence through Buddha's eyes, or the universal eye. The opportunity to experience real silence occurs when we have been driven into a corner and simply cannot move an inch. Can you feel that? This seems like a situation of complete despair, but this silence is quite different from despair, because in this area of despair, the conscious flame of human desire is still burning. But real silence is the state of human existence that passes through this despair. How can we experience this silence? Without everyday life, it is impossible to experience silence. Thank you. So I just want to invite Patrice up. And I will move this over here. Are you okay with this? Okay. Okay. So this is an opportunity.
We have another microphone too for questions.
Yeah, and I can share mine too.
We can grab them.
Oh, okay. Musho?
Could we just get a little introduction of Patrice for
Okay.
everyone?
Okay, so yeah, so let me, Patrice is a practitioner of Vipassana and is a teacher and leader at Common Ground. She's also works in chaplain hospice. She is a chaplain hospice person. Okay, you want to introduce yourself?
Give her the microphone.
Please, I can do this.
I've been trained as a Buddhist chaplain, and I've worked with people with HIV at the end stages of their life, and spent a long time in my life doing service work with HIV, but I have never actually been in a hospital as a chaplain, so I want to be clear about that. Some of the people that I worked with were receiving hospice in residential settings. So
And you practice Vipassana at Common Ground?
I practice Vipassana at Common Ground. I've studied in Myanmar, done monastery in Myanmar, in Thailand, and I do a lot of, my other sort of life is as an activist, working to achieve a multiracial democracy, a caring economy, and a just climate future. So that's kind of who I am. I'm a good friend.
Did you hear that? Also, I want to say that Patrice stepped off the 100-foot pole with me into this retreat of honoring both traditions of Vipassana and Zen. And she has also given a Dharma talk in September, so if you want to get more of a flavor, please go to Hokyoji's Dharma talks, September 24, and there you will find her as well. Is that good? Okay. So please bring forward any questions and reflections.
My question is for each of you. What has been the surprise or the learning or the unpacking from this retreat of being together with two different ways of meditation, Vipassana and Zen? I'd like to hear from both of you about that.
Well, I can say that one thing that is very different, and I didn't expect it to be as predominance, not the right word, but to be so essential, is the Zen emphasis on liturgy. And in Vipassana, I mean, we chant in the morning, we do precepts and refuges. When we finish a Dharma talk, usually people just say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. It's much pared down. So it's interesting for me to be in an environment that has a lot of very meaningful ritual, very beautiful. And when I practiced in Asia, there were pujas, there were more elaborate ceremonies, but at least in Western Vipassana and insight, it's not as integral to the practice. The practice has much less ritual, much less liturgy.
I think what I was struck with was the walking meditation, that not just for myself, but I could bear witness to other practitioners and the impact that had on their creating, or I could be making stuff up, I do it all the time, I'm sorry if I am, but okay. But it seemed that to me, I found myself in relationship to the community much more present with that walking meditation. There was some grounding that was taking place that I have not experienced in Zen walking meditation. So that to me was very profound.
Could she explain to the Zoomers how it differs?
In Vipassana walking meditation, the object is really to be very embodied. And so it is not walking at such a slow pace, although it could be relatively slow. But the effort is really to be in an embodied movement, to be mindful of the body in movement. And so people usually have a walking track, maybe 15, 20 feet, and you walk that, and then you stop, you realize you're standing, turn around, and walk again. And the emphasis is really in connecting with the earth element in the body, and the earth element in touching the ground.
So in our modern age, we get to take a little from here, and take a little from here, and take a little from here, and add these tools to our practice. As we are developing Western Vipassana, Western Zen, where is this going?
Let me see. That's a great question. And that's the question I feel that the next generation needs to bring forward. I mean, I got, what do they say, snow on the mountain? And I'm doing what I can to invite the next generation forward. And part of what I'm trying to do very deliberately is to bring in these beautiful traditions and how we, not in a competitive way, but in a way in which we're uplifting traditions in relationship to the suffering world. What does it look like? Because the Christians too, amazingly so, from my small mind, have done an incredible job, some of them, of engaging the way in relationship to the suffering world. And even the Catholics have done some very good, deep work. So part of what I think is I need to break up my idea of what it looks like, and also what, given these current, the volatility of these current conditions, what is an appropriate response, and where does that come from?
For me, the Buddha's great teaching was always, he said he taught one thing: suffering and the end of suffering. So I think as Buddhists, our inclination should always be to turn toward the suffering. And there is such massive suffering in our world right now. And I think particularly about the environmental crisis, and what we know about how impacted our planet has been by our habits, that it seems to me that it's really important for all of us to engage and not retreat. And one of the ongoing criticisms that I have had talked about in my own Sangha, talked about with Buddhists from other Sanghas and other traditions, is how often the response is to withdraw. The response is to simply work on sort of the purification of the mind, and to really to value solitude in a way that I think is really selfish. And the teachings are about dissolving the self. So I am really heartened by efforts to bring our traditions close to each other in the sense of of a happy kind of, maybe convergence isn't the right way, but the meeting. We get to meet each other. We get to understand each other's traditions. And I think partly, and this is just my opinion, but I think it's often a matter of temperament about which tradition you kind of feel an affinity for. I mean, I don't have a lot of tolerance for a lot of paradox. And Zen people swim in the sea. It is their nectar. And, I am someone who finds what might be considered a more prescriptive, more simple, direct in a different way tradition. I mean, I find that temperamentally something that I have an affinity with. And I think that people, for example, I've heard friends say that the Tibetan tradition, with its elaborate rituals and liturgies and visualizations of other beings, that really speaks to them. So I think that part of practice might be having the good fortune to find a practice that is in alignment with one's own temperament and one's own inclination, that supports, as we're talking about, supports liberation from greed, from hatred, from delusion, and really engages in caring for each other and caring for our planet.
Anybody on Zoom want to bring your voice into the conversation, into the circle? I don't want to call anybody out. But if I have to. We're friendly here. We invite everybody. Kyoku.
You're muted, Kyoku.
Can you unmute her?
Yeah, hit that button, it might help.
She has to do it.
Might need to ask her to type.
There.
Whoa, there.
Now you're on. Okay, so this is a wonderful discussion. Thank you, both GD and Patrice. One of the questions that comes up for me, I tend to be more like what Patrice described, which is a withdrawer. But I continually, as I study and read, the 5 remembrances are important to me in terms of stabilizing. So the 5 remembrances are, we're impermanent. We get sick, we grow old, we die, we lose everything and everyone we love. And I think of, our life is our karma is our life. And so the question that I grapple with is the continuing realization that I think of death and sickness, etc., as a problem instead of just as what is. And that can easily lead to saying, well, it's going to happen anyway, don't get too excited about it. So I don't know if that's clear, but this sense of what should I do about this? This being whatever I'm not liking or whatever I'm celebrating in the world that I understand that or that I see as the one that I'm living in. So I'll stop with the question and hope you guys can say something interesting, either our teachers or people in the audience. How do you view that? How do you work with that seeming conundrum?
Okay, if I hear your question, what I hear you saying is that part of the reason that you may not engage is because we're all, this isn't the terms you use, but I'm kind of distilling it, that we're all going to die anyway. And what is the use? Kind of a nihilistic view. Am I hearing you correctly?
It comes up that way, but it's a little more subtle than that. It's including the fact that no matter what we do, there's not a we. There is a continual movement that I continually misinterpret as reality through my way of thinking about it. So it's not, there are times when I go to a nihilistic point of view, except my whole being objects to that energetically. So it's like, how do we live with this contradiction of the 5 remembrances and yet the completely different nature of how things are in the universe? It's really the reality as a human being and reality as it is. They're both there.
Yeah.
But there is no there. So how
do you live with that?
Well, it's just, how do I practice with that? And how do other people practice with that?
Okay, let's open it up to the community. Would somebody like to bring forward your practice? I have Jiren.
I think it's really wise to recognize that there's a lot of suffering here.
You want to take the mic?
I think it's wise to recognize that there's not really a separation between suffering out there and suffering in here, and that it's really important to constantly work on suffering here, whether it's distraction or restlessness or greed, hatred, delusion. But ultimately, I think working on it in me is not separate from working on it out there in the world. They're mirroring each other. And so it's not okay for me to say, I don't care that you're being bombed in Gaza. I don't care about that, because it's not separate from me and I'm funding it. So it's definitely a dialogue and a going back and forth. But for me, I might need to take a little break, but they're not disconnected. And if I think I can actually stop because I'm going to die, it's a delusion.
Thank you. Was that adequate for this moment in time, Kyoku?
Certainly.
I'd like to move into, if anybody would like a last question or comment or reflection.
I had a similar
Okay.
answer to
And then
question.
we're going to close.
Okay. Just that I think this is where I lean into my inclination towards paradox. where there's a space there. There's a space of not understanding between the reality of birth and death and suffering and the continual energetic unfolding of the universe, which is me, or me in large as self. That space, that's the realm of practice, and we talk around it, we practice in it, but to just hold it as an empty space, as something that's open, that's always going to be open, and there's room for faith in that. To me, that's how I practice with it.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we close, would anybody like a last word on Zoom or in the Zendo? Okay, John. John's got the last word.
I don't think that's appropriate, but okay. I just, what comes to mind from Kyoku's thoughts is the concept of purpose, both internally within us and purpose in the world moving forward in terms of, and when Buddhist is, in terms of suffering, it's about, right, the purpose that I might have as a human being to help to eliminate suffering, and also in the world and also within me. So that's what I gravitated back to, so to speak, when Kyoku made her presentation.
Okay, thank you all. We're deeply grateful for your presence, Zoomers. And we're going to close this. Yeah, we're going to do 4 bows and then close this talk. Thank you.
May our intention equally penetrate every being in place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.
Shinko Marilyn, could you ding me out?
I got you.
Oh, you got me?
I got you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thank you,
day.
Zoomers.
Bye.